Welcome back to the Objective Slant. My name is Michael Aaron Lloyd, and we're here to talk about Brett Kavanaugh and what everything means today, because obviously there's a lot to talk about. We've got a lovely panel of people here today that are willing to just go over the situation in depth. Well, not necessarily in depth, but you know what I mean. Like to introduce them all to you right now. You guys can just go ahead and start.
Okay, so I'm Ethan Hansen. I'm the president of YCT here on campus, a conservative group. So just a little while ago, we were at a protest on the Library Mall, and International Socialists turned out. We were talking about Brett Kavanaugh, and specifically the fact that he was just cleared by the FBI, and the vote for him being on the Supreme Court will be tomorrow. So a lot of interesting conversations went down. I learned some things I didn't know necessarily, but I think we're going to talk about it a little bit for the next few minutes.
Hi, my name is Estrella Gonzalez, and I'm currently a comm studies major, and I just came out to the protest today to kind of get both sides of what's going on.
I'm Nicholas Wright. I'm a political science major, and I came down to the protest to listen to both sides and have a civil discussion.
Yes, so there was a protest today. Obviously, we couldn't get everybody from the other side of the spectrum to come on down, so
we didn't get anybody.
Couldn't get anybody.
But I think honestly, not trying to just have one viewpoint here, but that's a little bit telling.
Yeah.
So we've had issues with that group before. There are definitely people who are left-leaning on campus that are willing to talk about these tough issues, but International Socialists are not them.
So obviously, let's just get the elephant out of the room. You said that the FBI had confirmed the investigation?
Right, so Brett Kavanaugh, from my understanding, just a little while ago, I think it either was yesterday or today.
It was yesterday.
Yesterday, okay, thank you. Political science major over there. Confirmed that they had not found anything in the investigation of Brett Kavanaugh. Most Democrats seem to want the investigation to go longer. People like myself, more conservatives, are a little bit concerned that the accusations levied do not have enough evidence, and specifically that if the investigation was longer, like until next year, that there would be a different Congress after the election, and so he wouldn't be nominated.
And it's also the fact that there was the chance to have a longer investigation,
right,
seeing as before the information came out, Senator Feinstein held on to the letter for I think around 45 days.
Right.
And had she, and I understand that there was some issues with Dr. Ford and she didn't really want her name out, but had it come out but sooner, we could have had a month-long investigation.
Right, yeah, it's a lot of fishy stuff happening. I'm not specifically going to say, Kavanaugh is innocent. I see some conservatives say the same, Kavanaugh must be innocent. I'm not even going to say that. I'm just going to say that it's a dangerous precedent to set that, 5 witnesses, or I guess it's 3 witnesses and 2 that have been sort of discredited, if I understand, coming out are enough to restrict someone from being on the Supreme Court. Again, I'm not going to say he didn't do it, but again, you need some more solid evidence.
We do need more evidence. I am definitely on the side. I don't want to say that Ford is lying. I do think that something traumatic probably really did happen to her, and she's dealing with this. She's been holding this on for decades. But I do think having Feinstein hold on to the letter for so long kind of makes it seem a little bit like they're kind of weaponizing this from the Democrats,
right,
just because they don't want Kavanaugh confirmed. So I don't think there's anything really, some grand conspiracy that Ford is just malicious enough just to ruin Kavanaugh's life. But I do think that the Democrats definitely are kind of using this to their advantage.
Yeah.
And again, not to say, I do think something did happen to Ford, because that's generally not a claim you're going to make unless something did happen to you. But
she told her therapist.
Yeah, she told her therapist
she was sexually assaulted, and that's what she's accusing Kavanaugh of. That's another thing. She didn't even technically accuse him of rape. She accused him of sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
So we see signs out there say stuff like, Kavanaugh is a rapist, no rapist on the Supreme Court. Well, it's like, not only are you accusing him of this, you're accusing him of a crime that is even higher than what's been levied against him.
Mm-hmm.
And she told her therapist that she had been sexually assaulted. She didn't say the name.
Yeah.
And only after being spoken to by Democrats for, I think it was 6 or 7 days, did her memory
No,
come back, wasn't
it wasn't necessarily that, because she did know the name. She didn't know about Brett Kavanaugh, I think, when he was on the federal court.
She didn't tell a therapist, though.
Yeah, I don't think she told her therapist, but she did tell her local congresswoman about it, and then her local congresswoman referred her to Senator Feinstein, and then she sent the letter that she wrote to her local congresswoman, and eventually Feinstein got it, and somehow it got out of Feinstein's camp, and the media got it, and that's when it became addressed. But that was after 45 days. But when you look into the allegation, I think she named 4 witnesses that were there.
Right.
One of them being her best friend, and her best friend said that she didn't even know Kavanaugh and didn't know about the party that she went to. Now, I'm not going to say nothing did happen to her, but I personally, with looking at evidence, I don't see how you can say without a shroud of doubt that it was Kavanaugh.
And the evidence standard is different too. Like this is not they're not trying to put Kavanaugh in jail. They're trying to decide if he's going to be on the Supreme Court. So the question is, and what I think I was asking some of the people on the left at the rally earlier was, what level of evidence would be acceptable, for somebody to not be considered? Is it just eyewitness? Do you need something else? And I don't even know what my answer to that question would be. I just know that I don't think that eyewitness alone should be enough.
Mm-hmm. It's been 35 plus years. I'm not saying that she should have came out earlier. It's a traumatic event if it did happen to her, and people hold on to it for a very long time. But at this time, there's no statute of limitation in Maryland. So, in the police department there, I know that they're waiting for her.
Is there not?
No, there's no statute of limitation for sexual assault. People were telling me
it was a year for the rape, and I thought that was wrong. And I wasn't totally sure enough to tell them no, and I'm not even sure enough now. But that did sound wrong to me. That if it was just a year, that I was incorrect.
Well, I don't know what city it was in exactly, but I know that the police department was waiting on her to file a complaint if she wanted them to investigate. That's what they were waiting for. Right. And if that does happen, and if they find a criminal act was perpetrated against her, then I'm all for not having him on the Supreme Court. But when it's just he said, she said stuff, and there's no foundation of evidence, it's hard to make the claim. And this claim has pretty much ruined both of their lives to a certain extent. Dr. Ford's getting death threats, for example, which is unacceptable on either side, and it should be denounced by everyone, because there's no reason to send death threats to someone who is more than likely a victim.
Yeah.
And none of us are saying that. We're not saying that Kavanaugh is 100% innocent. And if evidence does come forward and we find out okay, he's been lying and he really did do something, I'm pretty sure we would all agree all right, he should not be he should not be put on the Supreme Court. But if he is innocent, then what does that mean? Or this is just like the Salem witch trials, where it's we could just point our finger to somebody and say, well, that man did something to me, and with no evidence, just not only the court of public opinion can just tear their life apart. And so I could only just imagine how his wife and his daughter must feel, because that's because I had some people at the protest say, well, if he's innocent, then it'll just go away. I'm like, well, no, that really did impact his life. So even if he does come out that he is innocent, that family's still going to be hurting for that for a while.
Well, the optics, what I find interesting just politically, the optics for this situation are not great on the left either. I think they've sort of played it badly, because they could have been very cautious, called him an accuser, all these things, been more rational, but instead it started with, #BelieveWomen. And that scares me, because it's there's no other specification. It's just believe women. It's well, okay, all women, all accusations. There's no anything else attached to that. And I think it's important to recognize how dangerous that precedent is.
And I think that just hurts real survivors, because we go back to the the #MeToo movement. that honestly hurts more women and men who have been assaulted, who have been raped, because if they were to actually come forward and say this person did something to me, now people are going to think, well, we've had so many false accusations in the past, we're not, they're not going to be believed. And so I think just as a woman, just to get called that I'm a traitor, that I do not believe in women's interests, I honestly think that this is just hurting us more than it helps, because now we're gonna, what if employers aren't gonna want to hire women because they want to protect themselves from any type of accusations, just like Mike Pence, he doesn't have one-on-one meetings or like luncheons with women as well. He always makes sure that, he's very cautious about how he does things.
Right, and he's ridiculed for that.
And he's ridiculed for
that. Which is wild, because if you had women's interest at heart, I don't think he would be afraid of somebody that was going out of his way to that degree to respect women and not to have allegations related against him. It's kind of the whole like cried wolf thing. If somebody makes a bunch of allegations, even if they were in truth true, if they can't be substantiated, they're going to be viewed as false by the public, and then real rape survivors, are going to struggle. So it's.
And even some people on the left, they'll say, well, then if you don't do it, then there's no issue. Like we see with Mike Pence, he's clearly putting himself in a position where there's no way you can make the claim that he even tried anything, but he gets ridiculed for it, which doesn't really make sense. And it sets a really strange precedent that believe women. I'm not I'm saying that of course believe people who were attacked, of course, but I have a father. I have brothers. You have a father, right? You can see with Kavanaugh, his life is going to be ruined after this. I remember there was. I remember during the testimony he had said, I probably won't be able to teach his daughter's basketball team anymore. And a day later, there was an op-ed, I believe in the New York Times, I could be wrong, that's saying why Kavanaugh should not be allowed to coach little girls anymore. Mm-hmm. What message are they sending with that?
Well, and that's the thing is, I read just in the NT Daily newspaper the other day, the opinion page by the editorial board specifically says that it calls out Kavanaugh for being angry, and then states he's angry because of not wanting to, I think the wording was something to the effect of like not wanting to admit his guilt. Mm-hmm. And it was like, no, you don't assume someone's guilty like that, and you can't just assume somebody is guilty because they come upset. Mm-hmm. It's perfectly rational to become upset if you're accused of something that heinous without evidence and you didn't do it. And so yeah, the problem necessarily isn't the people on the left, I would say the more moderate Democrats who are saying, maybe this should be extended for a few months, that kind of thing. That's not the problem. The problem is how incredibly vicious and like this issue has become, and like it shouldn't be a social issue. Mm-hmm. It really ought not to be. It ought to be viewed as how do we best investigate the situation and make sure this man's not a rapist, but it's not.
And people were looking at his demeanor during his testimony, how emotional he got. But at the same time, they'll talk about toxic masculinity, where you're supposed to be, if you're a male, you're supposed to be tough and not cry at all. But then they'll say that a male shouldn't have this. But when you see Kavanaugh, he's such an emotional state because of such an issue, an accusation levied against him that he claims he didn't do. Right. They're gonna rail on him and say that's not befitting of a judge, even though he's not in a judicial situation at that moment.
Right.
He had been a judge for 17 years, and no one had questioned how he was as a judge until right then when he's in a non-judicial situation.
Because you're right. Because if he had sat there stone-faced, completely calm and collected, they would say, "Oh, well, look, he just doesn't care at all. He's obviously a rapist." Mm-hmm. So it's so politicized, and someone at the protest on the left told me specifically, and I think I actually agree with this, was that I hate that the situation has become so politicized. I agree with that.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
But I don't think there's really a way around it, especially when people are throwing around hashtags like believe women, and they'll pretend like, oh, well, the conversation about sexual assault right now doesn't have to do with Kavanaugh. Yes, it does. Right? You're standing on the shoulders of this situation, which is like if you're gonna run a social campaign against sexual assault and rape, which you should because they're horrible crimes, don't do it on the backs, or I guess on the shoulders of a situation that's this up in the air and partisan.
Let me just talk to you guys about somebody, or rather, you guys can elaborate on somebody that Brett Kavanaugh was compared to, like on Twitter and other social media sites, Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some people saying that. It's totally different, I think. A lot of the Bill Cosby allegations were backed up with some legitimate evidence. I don't know a lot of specifics. I've read articles, but not enough to quote. But I don't think Bill Cosby was put away on eyewitness testimony alone. So that's a little bit.
I did find something interesting that I pointed out to Ethan at the protest, that there was someone at the ISO, on the ISO table, who actually had a sign that, said Clinton, Cosby, and Kavanaugh, believe women. And it's like, that's very interesting,
right.
Because, we had this problem in the 90s with Clinton having, affairs, but also, allegations of him assaulting and raping women. I had read a book a few years ago about the Secret Service agent who had worked under Bush and then stayed in the White House when Clinton came in, and about things like he had seen. And these women came forward, and Hillary was just, stood by her man, and she said that these survivors and these victims were lying. And so I don't know, it's just, I feel like everyone, especially with the 2016 presidential election, I feel like a lot more people on the left who really wanted Hillary to win just kind of completely swept all that stuff with Bill under the rug. So I think there is sort of a double standard there, but it was interesting that
it was refreshing.
Yeah, it was kind of nice to see that.
It was the socialist with that sign, and if they were willing to talk to us, I would have probably told them that I appreciated the seemingly unbiased, viewpoint on that.
Yeah, and I talked to some of them, and a lot of them were harboring on the fact that it's not he's not being for a crime, he's not being tried. It is a job interview, and they hold the idea of this, can't they just get someone else?
Well, and that's the thing, is even if it is just a job interview, right? And the employer, I guess the federal government in this, or I guess us as the people in this scenario, don't want to hire the individual. If you decide not to hire a person, it's a different thing to not hire a person because of allegations that you think are credible, and walking around with signs calling that person a rapist. That's where it really gets to me. The people that are the Democrats that are more moderate, I can understand, maybe we should pick someone else, etc. Fine, we can have a discussion about that. But specifically calling him a rapist, it is far too far. And they'll claim that, the right is being too partisan in an issue. That is partisan to the point of horrible accusations that are, like we talked earlier, essentially unfounded. So that's what bothers me about the situation the most.
Mm-hmm. I do think that back to the Bill Cosby thing. I think.
Please elaborate.
Yeah, I think. Well, it started off with Graham, right? Lindsey Graham, when during one of his fiery speeches, where he compares him to Bill Cosby, and how from his understanding of the Bill Cosby trial, you when you rape one person, you don't stop. And I get what he's trying to say. I don't think he came about it the right way. That's
Lindsay.
I don't think Kavanaugh probably appreciated being compared to Bill Cosby by someone who's trying to defend him. But what he's saying does hold true. This concept that he did assault her, and then he did it a bunch more times because there's a bunch more accusations. But there's only been 3, and then one of them was by a client of Stormy Daniels' lawyer,
right.
Who,
oh no,
I believe the claim was that he hosted gang rape parties.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, that one. And then there was one that, because he did drink a lot. He liked beer. That's what I took from from his testimony. He really did like beer.
You took that, just that.
Yeah, that was one.
It was one. The funniest
Is it
part.
light beer or dark beer?
What kind? He did like beer, and there was a claim that he whipped out his genitalia at a party, and if you were to make that claim, I could believe that. That would be something that would be believable, because he did drink a lot.
It's more in the realm of believable, but once again, accusations alone, not having not being considered for the position, it's definitely tricky. I don't see a reason why to not have the same standard of evidence we would in a criminal trial. in this trial.
Mhm.
And something I asked people at the protest was specifically, if it is not innocent till proven guilty standard, should it be preponderance of evidence standard like we have it on Title IX on campuses, or should it be more stringent? Like where is the line on that? And I couldn't get a clear answer, and that's what scares me. Not necessarily that people disagree about the evidential standard, it's the fact that there's not a line. And when you're dealing with these kind of things, that's really dangerous. And I know it's slippery slope argument, but it's still, I think it's, in this case, it's pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Fair, very fair. Oh God. Sorry, I just gotta collect myself here because you guys have had a very interesting conversation here. I know I've been kind of quiet about it, but got one final question here, and I'm gonna let you guys go. Do you guys feel that even without the allegations against Kavanaugh, do you feel that he should be confirmed? Do you feel that he should be on the Supreme Court?
Do you want to answer first, or should I?
Well,
I'll let you go.
taking into account the allegation, or without taking
without the allegations.
Without.
Yeah, of course. Regardless of the allegation or not, because of the fact that there is no, corroborating evidence as seen in the FBI investigation, he's going to get confirmed tomorrow. I'll put my money on that. And had it not came out, he would have gotten confirmed as well. Now, because of how partisan the issue is, when it shouldn't be partisan, it's going to be the same thing, 51-49, regardless if the allegation came out or didn't.
Yeah, the situation with Kavanaugh too. Someone mentioned to me at the protest that he was for extradited torture, and some certain things that I had not heard or read. I'd honestly probably have to look more into his background specifically. I read some stuff that I went over his voting history, and didn't see anything that was contrary to my more conservative values.
Interesting.
But in general, it's also like you take what you can get, and he's probably a lot closer to my values than somebody nominated, presumably by a future Democratic president.
Same thing. I'm more conservative, and I do, since he is conservative, and
just the simple fact that
it's just the simple fact that he's conservative, and so I'm pretty much I'm really neutral. If he doesn't get confirmed, I don't really think it'll hurt me. If he does, that's great. I could just imagine had the tables been turned, and maybe we'd probably freak out a little bit more if it was a liberal, really liberal person going on the Supreme Court, and the numbers would be like that, the way that they are right now. So, I'm pretty much okay with it if he does get confirmed. I have no really big complaints.
When he does get confirmed.
I have no complaints about that.
Well, thank you guys for coming on down.
Yep,
sorry that I couldn't get any other
viewpoints.
Well,
that's the fault of the International Socialists. So if they're watching this, y'all should send someone next time.
Oh, God.
Sorry.
But thank you guys for watching. I'm Michael Lloyd, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.